my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, recommended by LinkedIn Sales as one of 15 innovating sales influencers to follow. In today's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast, my guest talks about a proven process and creating a customer experience map. And this helps her customers achieve key success. With this proven method, it's like a map, a GPS for potential customers by grounding them where they are now and understanding where they want to get to, how they want to move forward. It also supports the sales team in positioning them as the expert guide and clearly showing how their clients will have success on the journey. So you're going to love listening to my good friend who I met not so many months ago at the Women's Sales Pro. She is also a Women's Sales Pro. She is an absolute laugh a minute, but also a great professional, which is why I wanted her on the Scale Your Sales podcast. My next guest has over 2 decades of experience in building relationships and serving clients across a variety of industries. She has experience driving revenue in both Fortune 100 organizations, as well as growing entrepreneurial companies. Her sales success is attributed to quickly gaining trust, understanding needs, and offering a simplified. She has found that the secret to increase the bottom line is to serve versus sell, and currently works as a sales coach to help teams break through the next revenue growth ceiling. Her niche is entrepreneurial companies running on business operations systems like EOS. So welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Kate Norton.
Hi, Janice. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful that you're here on the podcast. Now, Kate and I met at the Women's Sales Pro in Scottsdale, and she is funny as hell and has got an incredible sense of humor and really talented. So I instantly warmed to her and wanted her on the podcast. So it's so good to have you here. Now, I've looked on your online profile and everything like that, and there's an area that I kind of want to ask you about. When you said sparking aha is what you do on sales process delivery that grows revenue. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so we had just chatted before we came online that I really work with entrepreneurial companies. So I have a background in enterprise sales. That's kind of where I cut my teeth and did that for 10 years and then moved to the entrepreneurial world and realized that all of the amazing marketing and sales assets that they gave us, that really smart people, on Madison Avenue and big marketing companies and big advertising companies, they made us all these awesome materials that we sold with, but you go to entrepreneurial companies and they don't have it. And so the aha is, how do we simplify the assets so that salespeople can take a potential prospect, a warm prospect, quickly through the sales process and make them a raving fan. And one of the tools that I really believe in is the client experience map. So that's usually the aha that people are like, oh, no, we don't have anything that shows the journey of how a customer would go through our process. And so I help teams really come up with their client experience map.
That's interesting. That I would imagine that people have never even thought about looking at it from that point of view, especially at that level, because it's all about them and they create the processes and they want their customers certain things and interact with them in a certain way. But I think it's very difficult when you're an entrepreneur to actually think about it, not from your point of view, but to think about it from the customer's point of view.
Yeah, and entrepreneurs typically they've had a great idea, they've started a company, and they're great salespeople, and they're the best salespeople in the company. And so oftentimes we need to get all that legacy knowledge out of their heads in order for it to be repeatable for a team to be able to sell as well as they do. And the best way to do that is to create a visual, a visual that the sales team can put out in front of a potential prospect on a display, on that first sales meeting, and they can say, okay, here's where we are. A map grounds us in space, where we are and where we're going. And so it helps ground the salesperson and, okay, here's where we are. We're in the discovery call. If you hit the go button, here's where you're going to go next. And then this is what our proven process looks like moving into delivery. And then here's how we engage with you forever and ever and ever, and you are a raving fan, hopefully. But that ideal experience isn't laid out in a way that prospects can easily see for most people. They're trying to figure out how you're going to help them and how you're going to serve them. But putting it into a beautiful design that we call the client experience, it's a huge asset to the sales process.
And also helps to communicate the sales process internally as well to people that aren't necessarily on the front line of sales, but it's a revenue generating organization. So everyone needs to understand the part they play. So how much of that is communicated internally?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, I was speaking to a company the other day, and they're a big lighting manufacturer, and they turn over, after they win the business, they turn it over to a project manager. And so what we advocate is that this is the language that's used internally also. And then manager is going to pull up that client experience map and say, okay, here's where we are. New customer, thank you so much for your business. I've got you from here. And they pull them forward, right? So I like to say that the client experience map is like a Broadway show. It's the front of stage, right? It's how your beautiful process, how your ideal client experience looks front of stage, but everything's happening behind the curtain. And those are like the core processes of the business. So with that client experience map, when I work with companies, we create training addendums. So this is how the sales team talks about their piece of the process in front of the customer. Here's where the operations team comes in, or the delivery team. This is how about it if they're client facing, and then so on. Yeah, and then even down to who handles that client, who checks back in, who is going to have the quarterly reviews with them, things like that.
Right. Love it. Love it.
So it's very much based on like the Donald Miller story brand. There's a lot of that Donald Miller element in there, where there's a character who has a problem, who meets a guide, and that guide has a plan, and that plan can either lead them to success or failure. So it's a lot of that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what Dan Heath, not Dan Heath, StoryBrand does.
Yes,
I
Donald Miller. Yeah.
Yes, I remember reading the book and thinking about my website, which that needs to change as well.
It's the best sales book, but it's a marketing book.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what steps have you taken as a sales organization yourself to actually help develop buyers and customer centricity? And then how do you use that with your customers as well?
Sure. I mean, it's about really understanding what their pain points are, not only on my end, but then bringing that to the customer. If we don't understand what keeps our clients up at night, we can't possibly have a good client experience map to solve their problem. We can't have a map because we don't understand what keeps them up at night. So really into that pain. And I also find that with the customers I work with, oftentimes they'll get onto these discovery calls or the first meetings, and they're letting the customers just talk and talk and talk. We already know what they're facing. We know what their challenges are. So if we can align with them and say, this is what some of our other partners are experiencing. They're frustrated with this or this or this. Does that sound right? And then you've immediately aligned with them. You may say then, is there anything else that you're struggling with? So then you're kind of creating additional alignment, and then it's empathy all day long. We get you. We understand. We've worked with people like you before, and let me show you how we've led them to success.
Wow. I mean, it's so simple, really, isn't it? And it's simple from a human to human point of view. I think often salespeople get so up in their head about what a sales professional should say, and it often becomes well, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's not even, everyday human language, how you would speak to your mother. Have you found that?
Yes. Yeah. It's like, how do we make it just conversational and simple? People don't want to hear all the garbage coming out of your mouth. They want you to say simple words. Tell me what's happening. Tell me what you'll do for me. Like, keep it real tight.
Yeah.
and then go. I always say to, salespeople, go for the no. Like, if this is not an ideal client, this is not going to work, go for that no quick.
Yeah. Yeah. The quicker you can get a no is, and often no, as Andrea Weiss says, that often a no isn't a no. It's like, no, not right now. So you can even inquire that without being salesy as well. But the sooner you can factor people out, the more that you can actually focus on people that are within your sweet spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, my passion is just simplifying sales. Like, how do we simplify this? Not only for the customers so we don't bore them to death, but for those salespeople that, they have a process to follow. It's more business. They'll be happier. And I think we'll all make more money.
Yeah. So tell me about one tried and tested strategy that you can offer listeners to help them scale their sales.
Sure. I would say, start with understanding those key pain points of your customer, and if you don't know, and if all your salespeople aren't saying the same thing, what keeps our customers up at night? Ask everybody. And if they don't know, well, then come up with an ideal client avatar, a character, who is your ideal client. I mean, I would say that is the first. If you don't understand the picture in your brain, and everybody doesn't understand the picture in the brain of who that ideal client is, then that's the starting point. So I would say start there, and then let's walk through and figure out how do we need to take them through the process of, working with our company.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to switch it up a bit and ask you, who is your hero or shero?
Oh my gosh, who is my hero? Well, I mean, I would definitely say my dad. He just has the most creative mind of anybody I know. He's been gone sadly for 10 years, but he told me stories from the time that I was little, and I didn't realize how much those stories would influence how I've gone into my career in helping sales teams tell the story of working with their company. So he just had the most creative mind I knew, and he's my hero.
Oh, fantastic. Wonderful. That's what dads are for, isn't it?
Yes.
Having a great influence on you. So how can listeners get hold of you, Kate?
Sure. I'm at kate@highpeakgrowth.com.
kate@highpeakgrowth.com. And on LinkedIn, are you available?
I am on LinkedIn. Yeah, Kate Norton on LinkedIn. I sure am.
We'll put all of it in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast. I loved meeting you, and I can't wait for that to happen again soon.
Thanks, Janice.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.